If I had to go back to the beginning and say whether I would choose a YouTube channel, a blog, or a podcast first, I would probably choose... All right, I know a lot of y'all have been struggling with this question. You have been battling with this decision for a while. I'm tired of seeing you struggling. I want to help you come to a decision once and for all. So today we are going to talk about whether you should start a YouTube channel, a blog, or a podcast for your online business. If you know me, it should not come as a surprise to you that I have all three. So I think that I am in a great position to provide you with the pros and cons of each option and help you finally come to a decision for yourself. And speaking of making a decision, okay, after I tell you about the pros and cons of each one, after I tell you about what factors you need to consider to make your decision the best decision for you, you are going to choose. Yes, by the end of this video, you are going to choose whether you are going to be starting a YouTube channel, a blog, or a podcast. We are committing today. Okay, before I get into the pros and cons of YouTube channel, blog, and podcast, I want to make something very clear. There are some things that all three of these platforms have in common. All of them allow you to monetize in different ways. So you can monetize through ads, affiliate marketing, you can sell your own products or services. All of them allow you to establish yourself as a thought leader in your space, build a community, and build your email list, okay? So that is something that you can do with all three of these options. I will also hear people say, oh, well, I don't understand the Google algorithm, or, you know, YouTube has that algorithm that works against you and blah, blah, blah. Listen, all of these options have algorithms that they work by. You're not going to escape an algorithm no matter what channel you choose. They are all governed by a very specific algorithm that we don't completely understand, and those algorithms are all subject to change. So you are not going to escape an algorithm just because you choose a different platform. So those are the things that I wanna be clear, be upfront about right now. First, the pros of a YouTube channel. Outside of physically interacting with someone in person, there is no better type of content for building that know, like, and trust factor than video. When someone can see you, look you in your face, hear your voice, see your surroundings, they build a stronger relationship with you. And so it becomes easier to open yourself up to new opportunities, gain new followers, new subscribers, build that community, because people feel like they know you better when you are using video as opposed to using like audio or written content. There's virtually nothing that you cannot share via video. You can imagine that, like, depending on what type of content you're producing, it might be tricky to convey that information well in a written format or in an audio format. So for example, if you're like a financial planner or a financial strategist and you're talking a lot of numbers and terms that people may or may not be familiar with, it might be much easier for you to talk about those things in a video because, you know, maybe people need to see the numbers to understand what you're talking about, and you can't see anything via audio. Or maybe it's easier for you to like verbally explain something than to try to explain it with written words. YouTube is also a search engine, so that is really helpful when it comes to attracting new people to your channel, because a podcast is not really searchable. It is, but it's not good. Like podcasting is relatively young compared to some of these other formats, and so the search algorithms are not good. Even if you think about things like Instagram, you can kind of search, but not in the way that you can search on YouTube or Google, for example. So the fact that YouTube allows for searchable content is great for you, because that means if you create content that is searchable and people search for it, they will eventually find you. Also, YouTube has excellent analytics, and you can use those analytics to figure out what's working well, what's not working so well, what content is resonating with people. Whereas with podcasting, again, the analytics trash. I can't do anything really with my podcast analytics. Blogging, on the other hand, that does have good analytics, so that's another pro of blogging, but YouTube has excellent analytics as well. Also, video is really fun, and that might be a personal pro, but I really enjoy creating videos, so that's something to think about as well, because you need to be able to enjoy what you are dedicating so much time and energy to. Now for the cons. Honestly, for me at least, it's more work to be on YouTube, because I got to think about my hair, how I look, where I am. I have to have on clothes, which I may or may not necessarily do. I have to make sure that my surroundings are clean. I have to make sure that my camera settings are right, that you can hear me on my mic. I have to edit. It's just a lot more that goes into it. Even if you take a low-key approach to the YouTube channel, there's just more that goes into it. I also have to make sure that I'm keeping you guys engaged visually. Whereas if I am doing something audio or written, it's a little bit easier to keep people's attention. On YouTube, you always have the option of looking on those recommended videos and clicking away. Like, it's so easy for you to click to another video. So I have to make sure that we are continuously here, right? Because of all the work that it takes to think of the videos, script the videos, create the videos, edit the videos, publish the videos, it's just more time consuming, to be honest. I don't spend as much time on my blog content or on my podcast content as I do on my YouTube content. So you have to think about the time that you have available to you and whether or not it's feasible for you to dedicate to YouTube. Because of this, I also find, at least anecdotally, that it's harder for people to stay consistent on YouTube because it takes so much work and pre-planning. If you are gonna do it well, that it's really easy for people to drop off and fall off and decide that, they just don't have time for it. Also, it can be costly depending on how costly you want to make it. I shoot all of my videos on my iPhone 11, so I did not invest in a camera. I use my iPhone mic. I also have this mic right here. The only reason I have this is because of my podcast, but I don't use that for my YouTube videos. I have a little cheap tripod, and that's pretty much it. But some people choose to buy a camera, like the Canon M50, I think, is a really popular one that people buy. I do have a ring light, so that's one thing. And yeah, there's just more equipment, so it's easy for it to get costly. Whereas with the podcast, all you need is a mic, really, and a computer to edit it on. Oh, editing software. That's another thing that you can spend money on. I use Final Cut Pro. Oh my gosh, y'all. I totally flipped up. I completely forgot to record the podcast pros and cons. So y'all are going to get this regular phase. As for the pros, podcasts are pretty intimate. It's a wonderfully intimate platform, right? Because when you are talking about whatever subject your content is about, people are listening to it while they are completing the tasks of their everyday lives. So I listen to podcasts when I'm driving my kids to school, picking them up, when I'm washing dishes, when I'm exercising. When people are hearing your voice while they are doing the things that are so important and integral to their daily lives, it creates this almost indescribable connection and relationship that I think maybe even video doesn't really capitalize on, because a video, you actually kind of have to stop what you're doing and watch it, in some cases. Whereas a podcast, people are in more of a groove and using more of their senses to take in what you're saying. So I think a podcast is an extremely intimate medium and a great way to build a relationship with your community. Also, because people are completing these tasks while they're listening to your podcast, audience retention is better because they're more likely to keep listening to you because they are completing some other task that has to get done. But it's also not as easy to exit out of a podcast, or there's not as much pulling for their attention when they're listening to a podcast as when there's a video. Because a video, you're looking at the screen, and so you see recommended videos, you see ads, you see all of these things that can make you click out. Whereas if you're listening to a podcast, you don't really see anything because you're probably not looking at your phone. But even if you are, it's not like there are a whole bunch of recommended podcast episodes sitting there begging you to click on them. So your audience retention is better, which I think also helps add to that community building aspect. Podcasting can be really helpful if you have an audience that's on the go, because people are more likely to listen to a podcast if they're hustling and bustling around running errands, as compared to reading something, which is not really practical, or watching a video, which is not really practical either. And unless you have the upgraded version of YouTube, you can't even close your phone and still listen to the video. Also, there is less tech required than YouTube. All you really need to do is record the podcast, which some apps like Podbean, which is where I host my podcast, you can actually record your episode on your phone and upload it directly from there. So if you have a show where you do minimal editing or no editing at all, you can just record on your phone, hit upload, and then you're done. Of course, if you do choose to edit, then you would need editing software. I edit with GarageBand, which comes free on my Mac, so that's not something that I had to pay for. Now, the editing also becomes the con because some people don't know how to use GarageBand. I mean, I didn't really. It's not hard to learn, like it's pretty simple to learn, but that is like a thing that has to be done. All right, back to the regularly scheduled program. Lastly, we're going to talk about blogging. Lazy Millennial Lounge podcast and the Multipassionate Meg YouTube channel actually started out as a blog. Blogging is not dead, but blogging has elevated. It's a little bit more sophisticated and advanced if you want to use it for business purposes. Now, if you want to start a blog just for fun, just because it's cute, just to like use as a diary to express yourself, whatever, that's cool. You can do that without really any like guidance or training or anything like that. But if you are using a blog for content marketing, like for a business, then there are very specific ways that you need to do that in order to make sure it is being used as a legitimate marketing tool for you, not just like a blog just for the sake of having one on your website. The pros of blogging are that if you optimize your blog posts for search engines, so if you apply SEO concepts to your blog, then it is searchable. And so people can find you organically, naturally, if they are going to Google and typing in a question that you provide an answer to. That is called search engine optimization, and it does require some learning in order to do it well. But if you do it well, you can get a lot of free traffic that rolls into your blog, and that is one way that you can build your community, grow your email list, things like that. Another thing that people don't think about when blogging, we know that video content is like very magnetic, very engaging, right? But there are times when people cannot logistically watch a video or listen to a podcast. And so in those times though, they may be able to read written content. So some examples, I think about moms. When you are a new mom, if you are like breastfeeding or taking care of a newborn baby, you are up at all hours in the middle of the night and you're probably scrolling on your phone, looking at stuff, shopping, reading articles. You might not be in a position where you can watch a video or listen to a podcast because you're trying to get the baby to sleep, right? So you kind of need to be quiet. But you can sit there and scroll and read a blog post. So new moms, students, they might be in class, may or may not be paying attention. They may not be able to watch a video or listen to a podcast, but they can open an article and read it and not, like call attention to the fact that they're not paying attention in class. Don't ask me how I know this. I just know this. Another pro, there's a low barrier to entry, meaning that it's really easy to start a blog and it's very low cost. So WordPress, Squarespace, Wix, even if you choose to use that, I recommend WordPress, but to each her own. They don't cost very much in the grand scheme of things. You can get away with paying for a website host. Like for example, I use SiteGround and a domain name, and that's it. If you don't want to pay for anything else, you don't have to. That's all you need, and the cost is not that high. So blogging has a very low cost point and a low barrier to entry because there's not a whole lot of tech involved. Once you figure out, WordPress or Wix or Squarespace, then you just post your blog and you go on about your day. The last pro I want to talk about for blogging is that even if you feel like a blog is not like the central platform that you want to use to market your business online, it's still an excellent supplemental platform, meaning even if you create a podcast, even if you create a YouTube channel, you can use a blog in addition to those platforms to help promote your podcast or promote your YouTube channel, because again, you're gonna get that organic traffic flowing in if you are optimizing your blog posts for search engine. Now, regarding the cons, it does require some design work on your behalf, like whether you are thinking about designing your website or actually like making your blog posts look good. You can't just type up 5 paragraphs of text and throw it on your blog and think that people are going to read that. Like there is a way to design a blog post for optimal consumption and reading by a person. Also, like I've mentioned, it does require some SEO knowledge if you actually want your post to get found. And I will admit that it's also harder to build trust with people through a blog. Not to say that it's impossible, it's just that compared to video or audio, like you're not competing with that level of engagement. Written words cannot compete with video or audio in terms of like helping somebody really get to know who you are. I'm sitting here talking to you. You see my face, you hear my voice, you see what's around me, you see my facial expressions, like we kikiing and cacaing. You feel like you know me a little bit better than if you were to go to one of my blog posts and read that. It just doesn't compete. Okay, so you heard me give all these pros and cons, right? And you're like, okay, but Megan, how do I figure out what I need to do? These are the factors that I think you should consider. Think about the practicality. How practical is it for you to dedicate and commit to producing content on this particular form of medium for like an extended period of time? Be realistic about what you can be consistent with, and then practice being consistent. Your skill level, what are you good at? What do you already know how to do? Some people already have, some editing experience, and I will say that if you do have editing experience, then the video editing and the podcast editing are gonna come pretty easily to you. If you don't, that's gonna be a little bit more of a learning curve. For the blogging, some people already know WordPress or Squarespace, things like that. If you don't, it's gonna be a little bit more of a blogging curve. It's gonna be a little bit more of a learning curve. So think about what you already know compared to what you're gonna have to learn in order to use this particular channel. Also, because we are talking about YouTube channels or podcasts or blog posts for your business, you need to think about your business model and your ideal client and which of those media is going to be most impactful for your target audience. It's not just about you, it's more importantly about them. Do they prefer video or audio or blog posts? Like, you have to actually think about what they want and what kind of content is going to really get in front of them, because that's who you are trying to sell to. So think about that, but then also consider what you enjoy. Personally, do you enjoy writing more? Would you enjoy audio more, or would you enjoy video more? That is something that you should take into account, even though I do believe that you should focus more on what your target audience wants. Okay, so we're gonna do a quick lightning round so you can see which option wins out on different categories that are really important for you to think about. So first, let's think about intimacy, meaning like the relationship that you build with your community. Podcasting and a YouTube channel is gonna win out. It's much easier for you to nurture those relationships and build that community when someone can at least hear your voice, but if possible, hear your voice and see your face. If we are thinking about search, then blogging and YouTube channel are gonna stand out because these are searchable types of content. Whereas a podcast, you can kind of search for it, but it's not really that great. Prep work. How much time it takes to prepare that piece of content. Blogging and podcasting are gonna win. YouTube, creating video is a lot more work than creating an audio piece of content or creating a written piece of content. With cost, I'm gonna say that they're a tie. If I had to choose one, I would say that blogging would win, but each of them can be as costly or as inexpensive as you want to make it. So it's kind of up to you how hard you wanna go or how affordable you want to keep the process. Now, if I had to go back to the beginning and say whether I would choose a YouTube channel, a blog, or a podcast first, I would probably choose a YouTube channel. It would be a hard choice though, honestly, because I love all three media. The reason that I am saying a YouTube channel is because y'all can't see the crazy faces I'm making when I'm on my podcast. Like, you could probably imagine them in your head, but I like the fact that you can see them on YouTube. I like the visual aspect, and I also enjoy editing. That's something that I did a lot in high school, and I like being able to do that just a little bit again now. I think that video is more engaging, and I like engaging with you guys in this way, and I feel like it's a better way to build this community. So that's why I would choose a YouTube channel if I had to go back to like 2017 and decide what I was gonna do. But podcasting has been a wonderful experience and has really helped me, one, grow my network, but also better develop my storytelling skills. And I will never, ever underestimate the value of a blog. My LaziMILLENNIAL blog and some of the other blogs that I have that are more like for my professional business, they literally bring in organic search traffic on a daily basis, and I don't even really promote that blog much anymore. My content marketing company is based in helping health companies and soon entrepreneurs use blogs as parts of their sales funnel so that they can bring people in organically and eventually convert them to customers. And that is something that I'm able to do successfully because I know SEO and I know how SEO works and how to apply it to blog content. And so that's why I said I think a blog is an incredible supplemental tool no matter what other type of media you choose. And I recommend blogging specifically specifically content marketing through a blog, you know, because there's a difference between blogging and using a blog for content marketing. I recommend that to all business owners. So if there are any other specific questions you guys have about blogging and podcasts, the YouTube channel, let me know in the comments. I'm probably gonna do a follow-up video or at least some follow-up stories on my Instagram and put those in my highlights, because I know there are a lot more specific questions that I didn't cover. So if you can think of any questions that you have, let me know and I'll be sure to answer those, okay? Make sure you follow me on Instagram at Multipassionate Meg. I'll see y'all next time.